What do you think of having a BISO for communication between CISO, board executives, kind of the senior level? Now, you're familiar with
Yep,
the BISO or the
absolutely.
BISO?
I've been a BISO, and
Nice. Okay.
one of my favorite folks to chat with in cyber is a BISO. Patrick Benoit, just he was on my podcast just I don't know I think last week we recorded a show together. He's a BISO, and I used to be one as well. Every organization uses their BISOs a little bit differently, but for me, the B stands for business unit is the origins of it. Not business, but business unit is really kind of where it came from, even though it stands for business. Work with me here. And the
Yep.
fundamental idea is in a large enough organization, the CISO can't be everywhere. You need somebody who's got the executive gravitas, somebody who understands the security really well, who can align themselves with a unit of the business. Maybe it's a geography, maybe it's a region, maybe it's a true business unit, a company that manufactures cars, but also manufactures elevators, and somebody runs the elevator business unit, somebody runs the car business unit. Break it
Okay.
up however the business is broken up. Dedicate that person to that business unit and have them be the CISO for all intents and purposes to that business unit, and more importantly, from that business unit. The whole idea of having BISOs, in my mind, is that the CISO, A, can't be everywhere, and B, will never be able to intimately learn the level of the business that needs to be learned, that a group of BISOs can collectively do way better than a CISO could ever do it.
Yeah.
Now, what else can a BISO do? There's other roles. My friend Patrick, I mentioned, he's very customer facing as a BISO. I've also seen BISO roles that were basically nothing more than a deputy CISO. And I've also seen BISO roles that were very much all targeted externally. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's a generic term that gets used to describe a few different roles. But in terms of integrating with the business, interfacing with the business, and being the bridge between security and the business, absolutely. If the organization is large enough, you have to have BISOs.
So now with the BISOs, in the organizational structure, are they reporting to the CISO or C
Yep.
level?
Yep. They generally report directly into the CISO.
Okay. And now because I'm a little bit familiar with it, I was kind of doing some research when someone asked the other day, and I noticed that there's not much training for it to become this
Nope.
BCISO role.
There's not. There's not a whole lot of training for CISO either, for that matter, or for deputy CISO, or for chief of staff for a CISO, right? If you look at all the critical roles that are in any typical CISO organization, and again, I've worked, as you mentioned, I'm currently at a 15-man shop. I've been in a 5-man shop. I've been in a 50,000-man shop. The idea that you're going to have these different types of roles ultimately, no matter the size or shape, they're going to fall into the basic camps. If you got the CISO, him or herself, you've got the chief of staff, you've got the deputy CISO potentially, you've got the BISOs potentially, and the chief of staff is always, I should say, a potentially as well, because you have to be a certain size and type of team to even have that role. And all of those roles collectively equal what it takes to get done at an executive level to make security happen for a bigger organization. And every one of those roles, I've seen the people enter them from pretty much every weird, random background, sidestepping in, backwards walking in. Very few people rise through the ranks in a path and pattern that take them to BISO, that take them to deputy CISO, that take them to chief of staff for the CISO, that take them to CISO. I don't know that any origin story is even really the same, other than you can start as kind of an auditor level in GRC, work your way through the GRC ranks, and eventually hop into one of those roles that way. Other people, I guess, from the technical side come in, same thing. Maybe you're an engineer, you become an architect, potentially you become a BISO after that. But there is no consistent story. Everyone I've met in those roles always has a different origin story. Some people started in IT. Some people did a complete lateral from a whole nother department that had nothing to do with security. I've heard every story under the sun.
Wow. Now with that role, BCISO, CISO role, now you always hear kind of the story that it's not a technical role, right? It's really kind of a business. What are some skill sets that you would need to really be a good BCISO, CISO?
Okay. So let's start with that origin story I just gave. There's the GRC camp and there's the technical camp. Those are
Right.
generally the two backgrounds that lead towards a leadership role in security. Those are generally the two. And again, I've seen a million other stories, but let's assume that's where the bulk of them come from, is one of those two camps. I personally grew up in the technical ranks, and later came to own GRC and run it and respect it. But I started as a technical person. My security chops were, actually writing the firewall rules and stopping the bad guys, where, in the machine. Systems administration and blah, 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 and eventually manager of IT, and then security focus, and on and on and on. So I would argue that a good CISO, by the time you've reached the CISO level, has to be first and foremost a business person, period.